Does your 2014 to 2018 Subaru sound like this? This type of whining or screeching is common when you have a bad V-belt, tensioner assembly, or idler pulley. I'm going to show you how to fix this and do a little bit of troubleshooting for the 2014 to 2018 Subaru Forester model year. Overall, I'd give this job a 4 out of 10 in terms of difficulty. Anyone with basic tools has the ability to complete this job and save themselves some money. The tools you're going to need for this job are obviously a wrench, a screwdriver, and a series of different sockets. I used a 10mm, 14mm, and 15mm 6-point socket, as well as a 10mm hex. Next up, we have the actual components we're replacing. On the right, we have the belt tensioner assembly. In the middle, the idler pulley, and on the left, the V-belt. I used 2 different torque wrenches and a screwdriver during the course of this video. Torque wrenches I'd highly recommend having. If you don't, you run the risk of improperly tightening something and something coming loose, or over tightening and breaking. Let's get started. Your first step to gain access to the belt and assemblies are going to be to remove the V-belt cover. You'll have to pull a soft grommet on the far left side and then simply place the cover somewhere safe. Next up, you need to remove the old belt. Attach the tool to the V-belt tensioner assembly and rotate the tool clockwise to loosen and remove the V-belt. At this point, if you are replacing it, which you should if you're replacing any of these other components, you can inspect it for bumps and cracks or any other imperfections that might indicate that it's time to replace the belt. Next, we'll remove the belt and start the vehicle. If the noise has subsided, we know the culprit is one of the pulleys or tensioner assembly. As you can hear, the noise has subsided. That means it's one of our moving parts along the accessory drive controlled by the belt. In the next clip, I'll spin each of them independently to determine where the sound is coming from. Now that we've correctly identified the problem, let's have a look at replacing the tensioner assembly and the idler pulley, as well as the belt. Removing the belt tensioner starts by taking out this plastic plug and using a 10mm hex in order to remove the bolt. I've seen other examples where it uses a 12, mine is a 10, so just give it a try. Once this is loose, you can use your fingers to remove the bolt the rest of the way, and we will shortly replace it. Here's an example of an OEM belt tensioner assembly versus an aftermarket one. You can see they're almost identical with the same stopper, and it was a 1-to-1 fit, so you can just clean out the bracket that holds the tensioner assembly and start to install the new one. Once this is finger tight, you should grab a torque wrench and torque this to 18.4 foot-pounds or 25 Newton-meters. The next step is removing the idler pulley. You'll need a 15 metric 6-pointed socket and a little bit of elbow grease to break this one loose. Mine is particularly tight, so be careful here and ensure you don't break anything. Once this is loose, you can simply take it off and ensure that you keep the washer and the bolt intact. You'll need to replace that the same way when we change pulleys. Having a look here, we can see why we had our problem. And solving it with a new pulley. Here's a side-by-side of both of those for reference. Reinstall the idler pulley the same way the old one came off, and then grab a torque wrench and make sure this is torqued to spec. I'll put those on the screen. As a note, the manual specifies foot-pounds, which is the same measurement this torque wrench is using. Alright, now that the components are torqued up, give everything a quick wiggle test, and we'll get the belt installed as the last step. Before we install the belt, I do a quick size check to make sure we have the same part. Of course, if you use the part number for your vehicle, you will have the correct belt. This is just for sake of example. Now, the most difficult part of this entire installation is probably running the serpentine belt ironette's correct pattern. I'll put the pattern on the screen so you can view it, and I would recommend doing this in alphabetical order based on the diagram from Subaru. A helpful hint here is to ensure that you have your wrench ready to move the tensioner assembly into the correct position so you have some slack and you can route the ridges of the belt around each of the pulleys and following the correct pattern. And a note that I learned from watching other tutorials, the smooth side or back side of the belt will always rest on the pulleys, and the ridge side will lay across all of the components on the accessory drive. And a final look at everything installed and tightened correctly. Let's try it out. As you can hear, everything is humming along nicely, and this problem has been resolved. Last step is to put the V-belt cover back on, close up the hood, go for a drive. Thanks for watching.